the special meeting agenda.
So moved.
I'll make second.
Thank you.
Mr. Hammond,
Yes.
Mr. Merkins,
Yes.
Mr. Rager,
Yes.
Mrs. Hartley.
Yes. All right, and board discussion this evening is a work session on board governance, and we have Christy Robbins and Terry Morgan here from the Ohio School Board Association, OSBA, here to lead us on a work session.
Great. And I'll just say a quick hello, because I'm gonna follow Christy's presentation, but it's good to be back. I know some of you from different places and times, but I enjoyed my time working with Huron to find James. That was a fun search. And we appreciate the opportunity, and we will try and pack as much information as we can into probably 2.5 hours so that we're not here so late. Sound good? Okay, I'll let Christy.
All right, thank you. Start by handing out these slides. Some of them are a little small. I apologize for that, but I can send a PowerPoint.
That's great.
Thank you. Just so that you have reference. Hi, how are you?
Good.
She's joining us, right?
Yep, she'll be here.
All right, so my role this evening is to share the results of your board self-assessment. And first of all, kudos for starting the year out by doing that. This will be a good baseline for you since you have 2 new board members. And I'm sure people who've been involved in the community who have observed the board meetings and interactions yet have not sat in the seat that you're sitting in now. So as we walk through this, this is really just sharing the results, and then we'll talk a little bit about what you can do moving forward with the results, all for the purpose of improving. So just to push this slide a little bit. Just as a reminder, when we talk about board self-assessment, it's not something that's required by law, like the superintendent evaluation, the treasurer evaluation, but it is something that is important to demonstrate transparency and effort to your community. If you're expecting teachers to be evaluated, staff to be evaluated, superintendent, treasurer to be evaluated, then it's important for you to reflect on how you're doing as a board. We also compare the results to the 5 standards, and basically when you completed the assessment, you rated yourself against these 5 national standards for effective Board of Education members. And ultimately, as we begin to look at goals and objectives that you may set for yourself, once you see the results going forward into the year, it's all about alignment. So making sure that your board goals align with the district goals and priorities, with the superintendent goals and priorities, with the treasurer goals and priorities. So we'll talk a little bit also about the potential of strategic planning that you might want to do. So all of these things are listed as rationale for board self-assessment. I think it's most important to, again, think about building relationships with new team members. You are a team. And anytime there are new members joining the team, there's going to be changing dynamics. So it's an opportunity to level set and to think about things that you believe you're doing well in these 5 areas and things that you can improve upon. And that will help build relationships. And again, it's not about finding a way to agree on everything, but it's finding a way to work with one another and to be able to facilitate healthy conflict, healthy debate, and ultimately do what's in the best interest of the students. So we mentioned the strategic plan. You can show, I guess you're recording this evening, is that correct? So just, okay. Very
Behind
good.
you, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm standing right in there. I should have done. So you can share, again, with the community, the results of the assessment, and that demonstrates how you work with one another, what you're going to do going forward, and how it's going to be monitored. So in the assessment that was shared, there are 5 Board of Education standards. You can read them here. These were set initially by the National School Board Association and hold true today. And under each standard, there are a set of indicators that you were asked to rate yourself against. And of course, in some cases, being brand new board members, it's challenging to do that, and that's okay. But it's an opportunity, again, to kind of set the pace for the future here. So we're talking about conducting, when we talk about responsible school board governance, we're talking about how you conduct board business. Do you do it in a fair and respectful manner? Do you respect and advocate for appropriate roles of board members and administrators? So understanding the differences between the role of the board members, the role of the treasurer, the role of the superintendent. Policy is really what your focus should be as a board, staying at that 30,000-foot level in terms of governance. So are you adhering consistently to policy? Are you committing to open and honest and transparent communication and working as members of a collaborative team? So these are examples. If you're thinking about, okay, those are the indicators, what are some examples of meeting those indicators? And you can read through them, but also this is what you were measuring yourself against and your knowledge of the board's work. The results, this is standard one, and as we just reviewed, there were 5 different areas that you rated. And you can see the green is exceed standard, blue is meet standard, and yellow is improvement needed. So when you, if we look at the first indicator, conduct board and district business in a fair, respectful, and responsible manner, in that scenario, you had 1 who believed that you exceed standard, 3 that you meet standard, and 1 that needs improvement. Under ensure the board is accountable and open to the public, including seeking divergent perspectives in its decision-making process. 4 of you were at meets or exceeds standard with 1 needing improvement. And then the next 2 are areas, if you're gonna focus and kind of drill down on areas that you might wanna focus on over the next year, it would be the next 2. And that's respect and advocate mutual understanding of the roles and responsibilities for board members and superintendent. And in that case, there were 2 who believed that you meet the standard, but 3 believed that there's room for improvement there. And then promoting healthy relationships by communicating supportively, inspiring, motivating, empowering others. 1 of you believed that the standards is being met, with 4 of you saying there's room for improvement here. And then finally, work as an effective and collaborative team. This is an area 2. 3 of you, meet standards, but 2 indicate improvements needed. I did include the comments because we gave you an opportunity to write some specific comments and tried not to reveal who said what. But this is a time for you to speak up. We want this to be interactive. If you look at the comments, if you have questions about the comments, we're not going to debate the comments. They are what they are. But it gives you an idea of why this particular standard was rated the way it was. So whether it's someone observing from previous events that they participated in or attended. The comment, it feels like some provide administrative direction in private and maybe even different opinions in administration then has to spend time and effort trying to sort through this and making everyone happy. So you want to verify, is that the case? Is that how administration's feeling? Changing opinions from one board meeting to the next makes it difficult to get alignment on some topics. Someone stated, I don't feel that we act cohesively as a board. Another, I felt confident that the last configuration met or exceeded the measures or the standards, but after just 2 meetings, it's too soon to tell, obviously, as we said, but I'm hopeful, so that's good. And then with the board transition and onboarding 2 members, having an opportunity to build on past successes and then seek to grow and improve and be collaborative in the process. So I'll pause there. Anyone want to comment on anything that they shared in these comments or anything that they believe to be true based on the assessment in this particular standard? Remember, this one is provide responsible school board governance. And welcome. All right, so we'll, again, this is sharing results. So if you're like me, I like to process results and then maybe have some further discussion down the road about what do we do with this. This is something we want to set some specific board goals around. standard. I just have high expectations up there. The full standard reads, set and communicate high expectations for student learning with clear goals and objectives. So there are 4 indicators here. You can read through those. You have to rate yourself and the board against these 4 indicators. And some examples of what the indicators mean, things like we speak to our strategic plan in board meetings. Do you have a current strategic plan? If you don't, maybe an opportunity for you to think about developing one. Or you discuss topics including special and gifted education, extracurriculars, those types of things. So when looking at the results here, this again, when you look at the 4 different areas, the one area that it seemed that there might be an opportunity for improvement is lead the development, articulation, and stewardship of a vision of learning that's shared and supported by the district and community. So this chart reflects all of the 4 indicators, but when we drill down and look at them specifically, that's one of the 4 where 3 of you believe you meet the standard and there's 2 who believe there's opportunity for improvement. So again, you can reflect on the comments. Obviously, with some new board members, you may not truly know, or maybe it's a current board member, a veteran board member who just really doesn't know the answer to that question. Think that we all contribute and set high expectations for staff and students. Someone stated they're not aware of a district plan. There may be one, but they're not familiar with it. Appears to me that we're promoting educational success as much as we need to. Another, I believe the board through our administrators does a solid job in ensuring our district is high performing and provides opportunities for all students to reach their potential. And then finally, I think the board has some opportunities for better connection to the student learning goals and outcomes. So that may be reflected in what we were just discussing. Any surprises, any comments? Anyone want to elaborate on this particular standard? And this is setting and communicating high expectations for student learning with clear goals and objectives.
I will just say, I think mine is probably the last one. I think, I feel like Julie does a great job during her presentations whenever there's some type of, like, the assessments are coming in, letting us know, like, timeline and those kinds of things. And then, I guess I feel like as a board, for me personally, I feel a little bit more passive in receiving those and in really putting it more on me to be more informed about what's going on. I understand, like, the importance of those things. So really, for me, this was more a question that I took, like, for me personally, to be more aware and informed about those.
Okay, great. Anyone else?
I guess piggybacking off that too, I feel like there are so many changes that come from the General Assembly, like, I'd say annually, but it probably comes faster.
Yeah.
So I think in some instances we're absorbing, and I think, again, Julie, I think, does a really good job of kind of helping explain it to us. But I think trying to absorb what is constantly a moving target of what I think what we know what, like, general high achievement or should be, but then also this ever-changing compliance and kind of new hoops to jump through annually from the state.
Absolutely. You never know what's coming your way. And I was at a conference at a meeting last night where we had a legislative update from our team, and they're monitoring over 200 bills.
Yeah, it's just
that have some impact one way or another on education, public education, educational policy. So at the board level, again, at that 30,000-foot view, need to make sure that you stay at that governance level and that your policies align with what's coming down the road or what's been passed when it's ultimately passed to be in compliance. So it is a moving target, and it is challenging to stay on top of. Other comments? All right, so the third standard is create conditions for district-wide conditions for student and staff success. So here again, there were 5 different areas that you were asked to rate from your perspective, how you feel that you're doing, how the board is doing. And the indicators you can read for yourself. The two that I pay particular attention to: provide for learning essentials, including curriculum, technology, and facilities, and ensure management of the organization, operations, and resources for an efficient and effective learning environment. These are examples of what these indicators mean, or what it would look like for you to be successful, to exceed expectations that we wanted to provide. And this is the overall result. So the two areas that I just mentioned, provide for learning essentials, including rigorous curriculum, technology, high-quality facilities. No one felt that you're exceeding standards here. 3 of you believe that you're meeting standards. 2 needs improvement. So something to consider and to look at as you make plans going forward. And then the second one, similar results. This was ensure management of the organization. So some comments here related to facilities primarily, thinking that the facilities are not high quality. There's a general lack of appreciation and professionalism among staff that this person's experienced over the previous years. So comment that, again, is being shared just to make sure people understand where this person's coming from. Facilities needing improvement, continued listening to parents towards bullying improvement, handling of certain situations seems to be improving, but need to continue to refine and encourage. Facilities need to be addressed, so there's a common theme here, obviously. And then belief that developing a student safety mindset continues to be an opportunity. And then a comment that 2 areas in which we excel are financial management, so kudos there, and staff development. So there's opportunities for growth that exist in facilities, safety, and efficient learning environment. So any surprises, any comments, anyone want to elaborate your feelings here?
Whether the ratings are, people took the scale differently. I mean, the comments, I think, show like it's a pretty unanimous, on at least feelings. Maybe there's different levels of those feelings,
Yeah,
but it's,
there's the 5 beneath, the
Yeah.
5 different statements where you had to rate. So these, even though there's consistency in terms of how you all feel about the facilities, the other areas, like I talked about, that aren't mentioned here, about learning essentials, curriculum,
Right.
technology, those types of things, just to consider. The 4th standard deals with accountability. The full statement reads, hold school district accountable for meeting student learning expectations. 3 indicators here that are listed, and for the most part, you believed that you meet or exceed expectations. So I didn't make a note on this particular one as an area for you to consider setting a board goal around, but again, you do have one person who may not know, again, to new board members, are you evaluating the superintendent, treasurer, and clear and focused expectations, which was one of the specific indicators. So again, well, there it is. I don't know enough to answer this section or this question, and comments about the ratings in state standards. There was a comment about the board doing the evaluation of the superintendent and treasurer in public. You're able to do that, as you, I don't know if you know or not, but in executive session, and that probably is the more appropriate place to do that if you're having some of those feedback discussions or tough discussions. But again, if you want to make sure the public is aware, you can, in public session, notify them that you're going through this process, and if there's positive feedback or if there's a contract extension, then obviously the feedback's positive. Holding yourself to what's best for the kids. Student performance is on the district part, on the family and students, so that's an interesting comment there. And then having a solid system for measuring outcomes, work is communicated to and celebrated with the district. So any surprises, concerns, questions, comments here? And you'll have time, as I said, to really kind of look at them. I'm going to send the full results to you so that you have them as well. I just wanted to do more of a high-level overview. Standard 5, this is an area a lot of boards we work with really spend a lot of time on when it comes to improvement and setting some specific board goals. And the full standard reads, engage local community and represent the values and expectations they hold for their students. There are 4 indicators, as you can see, that fall within this standard. And of the 4, the 2 areas that seem to be maybe areas that you can focus on if you're interested in improving. The first was collaborate with families and community members responding to diverse needs and mobilizing appropriate community resources. And even that, I mean, you had 1 individual who believed you exceed the standard, 2 needs and 2 needs improvement. And then the last one, solicit input from staff and a wide spectrum of the community, so a diverse range of interests and perspectives are considered. Here you had 2 who believe that you meet the standard, 3 who believe that you can improve in that area. And these are, again, are examples of things when you think about, well, what does it mean to be successful in this area? So overall, this is what this pie chart looks like in terms of your response, so. Something to consider. And then the comments, I won't read through all of them, you can do that, but there seems to be a consistent theme of doing better in terms of developing a better relationship with the community or improving your relationship with the community. Communication, as I said, is always something that every board in the state of Ohio can improve upon. And every board in the state of Ohio hears that they're not transparent enough and they don't communicate enough. Terry may have shared her experience on the board. I served on the Westerville Board of Education for 8 years. And this was one of the reasons I ran, was because I was very involved in the community and I continued to hear from people that we don't know what's going on with the Board of Education. Even though you're meeting in open session, you're recording your meeting, you have an opportunity for people to attend, we have to do what we can to make sure we're out and about in the community and engaging the community. So it doesn't happen right before you put a levy on the ballot, and that's what we were accused of doing, was we don't hear from them until they're ready to have us go and vote for more taxes. So again, any kind of comments when you look at, or questions when you look at these comments from everyone? Any surprises here? Again, not unusual, but maybe an area to focus. So I did take a look at your website, and I know we had talked about the need potentially for a strategic plan. You do have a mission, obviously, engage, equip, and empower every student to reach their full potential. And you do have strategic priorities that are listed on your website. So how this works is if you want to set goals that are specifically for the Board of Education, and that's what these goals would be based on your assessment. It's for you. It's not district goals. It's for the way you interact with one another. It's for the way that you communicate with the community. Whatever you want to do to improve in the area of responsible school board governance. But as I mentioned earlier, it's important to make sure that everything is aligned. So this is a matrix that we prepare and provide to boards. Across the top, you would list those 4 priorities, those 4 goals that we just took a look at here. And then down the side are the 5 board standards. And so in looking at what you want to do to improve, you want to make sure that they are aligned with your priorities. An example might be one of the goals that we had was related to engaging family engagement, community engagement, building trust with the community, and that aligns nicely with the standard of community engagement. So we talked about what could we do as a board to really focus and try to improve in this area. And our community is pretty large, 52 square miles, 14,000 kids, so very different. But we wanted to make sure that we were out and about in the community, and we actually set a goal of developing an event-type calendar, a civic organization type calendar, where we knew that we had people from the board present at some of the really key events in the community. So Rotary meetings, Chamber of Commerce events, library was a strong partner of ours. So So it was one way just to make sure, sure, we all show up at Friday night football games, but what else are we doing to make sure that we have a strong presence in the community and that we're building those relationships and that we're getting the message out about what we're doing as a board and what the successes of the district. And then in terms of staying on track, this is just, again, a first step. You took an assessment, you have 2 new board members, it's an opportunity to set the baseline. And then think about what we reviewed, and you'll, again, get the full results. And talk about, as a board, what do you want to do to improve? Where do you want to focus? What are the areas that are most disconnected, perhaps, or that you really want to focus on going forward? Set those goals. Typically, that's done at the end of a year, beginning of a new year, so kind of in the June, July timeframe. And it also is aligned with setting superintendent and treasurer goals. Again, that word alignment, making sure you're all on the same page. And then identify objectives. I mentioned the goal that we had about establishing an event calendar for the board. Establishing, another thing that we did was we did a board report. So, and again, this was a while ago, so we had, cell phones obviously and texting, but as soon, people knew what happened at the board meeting before you all walk out the door typically. We had a lot of people at our board meetings, and they were texting and putting things on social media, so we wanted to manage the message, and so it was important for us to create what we refer to as basically a one-page board report that was very simple, talked about, what the agenda item was, how the vote was, if there's any reasoning behind that needed to be shared. And it went out immediately, or the next day, especially to staff, because we had a lot of complaints where staff said they didn't know about decisions until they read about them online or on social media. So we made a real concerted effort. What's our message? What's important for the community to know, and how do we get that information out? So then you would have what's called a formative discussion. So mid-year, you set your goals, you set your objectives, and then you take time out, so you're not waiting till the end of the year, maybe have a work session, and talk about how things are going. Goals can change depending on the circumstances. We might have had some really admirable goals, and then we had a pandemic, and so we had to pivot. And that's okay, as long as everyone understands why you are not going to be meeting those goals, you're going to be changing them. So adjust them if needed, and then at the end of the year, have that summative discussion, and again, do it in a public setting where this is how we rated ourselves. These are the standards we wanted to improve upon. These are the goals that we set, and only 2 or 3. You don't have to set a whole arm's length of goals. And how are we doing? And making sure you're transparent about that. And I talked a little bit about the formative assessment. So these are some questions you can ask again and talk about progress and any challenges and any adjustments that might need. And the summative assessment. I get ahead of myself. So action planning, everything again should be aligned to your vision. If you have a vision statement, you do have a mission, strategic priorities. What are the district-specific goals and objectives? What are the board-specific goals and objectives? What are the action steps? How are you holding yourself accountable? What's the timeline? If you set specific goals, you specifically say, we want to get this done by the first quarter, by the first semester, however you choose to do that, and what's the evidence of success? So, any questions? This is kind of a quick run-through. I appreciate you all digging in and doing this assessment. I know everyone's busy, but again, the results should help you get that baseline of how are you doing as a brand new board, and where do you want to go, and again, you're modeling. When people watch your meetings or come to your meetings, you're modeling how to behave, how to interact with one another, how to disagree in a healthy manner. I really believe conflict is an opportunity for you to demonstrate, how do we disagree if we have differing points of views, and how do we come to a consensus that might be even better than the original one proposed or solution that was proposed. All right, any other questions, comments? Anything you might add? Gary's got a lot of experiences as well.
I'm gonna take it real.
Okay.
This is the high level.
For me as a new board member, I still learn.
Yes.
So bring some experience and some knowledge being involved in schools for 15 years. Mostly in the financial end of things, but I've been engaged. I've seen different boards. I've seen effective boards, and I've seen boards that aren't quite as effective. So I have an expectation of myself as a board member, how I want to handle it. But I'm still learning that, like, questions about have we established mission, and I don't know. I'm assuming you have. I trust that you have, but I don't know for sure. Those missions, I don't have any input on that at this point. I hope I will be. If I had the same assessment a year from now, it would be totally different.
Yeah,
And
that's
part of it, as you said, Christie, is understanding each other.
right,
It's a group dynamic that I haven't figured out yet.
yeah.
And how do we interact? How do we disagree to agree to disagree and move forward? Because that's ultimately our goal, is to work more cohesively as a board.
Well, and I think you hit on a couple of things. My belief is that people run for the Board of Education, those who run for the Board of Education and are elected want to be good board members.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I would say most people want to do a good job. They may be coming from different perspectives, but they want to be good board members. Asking questions. When I ran and when I was elected, I met with the superintendent. Of course, I had my ideas of what I thought I could do to help change the culture. And my background is human resource management, so a lot of the complaints were related to supplements and supplemental pay and teachers' pay. And I thought, well, I can just go on in and plop down my experience in the district. Well, I learned very quickly. A school district is much more complex than being able to take a business model, bring it in, and plop it down. But when I met with the superintendent, said, I just want to do a good job. What's your advice for me? And he said, first of all, to know policy. And you have a lot of policies. You're not going to memorize them all. But if you do get a question from the public, going to see if you have a policy first. And then if you don't understand the policy, asking the experts. You have a CEO and a CFO, and they're the educational experts. So make sure you're familiar with the policies, you know where to look, you understand them. The second thing he said was ask good questions. And governance really is about asking questions. And having somebody fresh, a new perspective coming in. And, I think whenever we hire new employees, I always say they have 90 days above the water line before you kind of sink down in and you don't see things as clearly. So ask questions. Good governance is about asking good questions and realizing there's always another side to the story, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 different sides to the story, but that advice served me very well.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Any questions or comments for me before I hand it off to Terry?
And certainly, Christy, you all would not care if she gets on the road to Michigan, right?
Oh my goodness, no.
I'm gonna wait a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you need to go, if you guys want to take a quick break, I'm going to change out PowerPoints.
Okay.
My husband was looking for a sports bar, so I'm giving him that grace to finish his beer,
All right.
whatever game is going on.
Yeah, not just here. Christy, thank you.
Well, thank you. And I'll send the full results. Do you want me just to send them to you? Is that-
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
And you can
yeah.
distribute them.
Yeah, that sounds good. So I did my student teaching at Westerville North.
Oh, Westfield North, okay.
Yes, a long time ago.
I'm a South grad.
Okay.
So North was built my sophomore year.
Okay.
And they kept all the seniors at South, and then they opened North up with freshmen, sophomore, and juniors. So, and now we have a third high school, as you probably know, Westerville Central.
I know, it's just wild,
Well,
especially,
JTC,
well,
right?
anywhere around,
Their fifth high school.
yeah, anywhere around the outskirts and the 270 just spreads and spreads, even down in the south, and,
All right, thank you.
yeah, it's a lot.
It has changed, that's for sure.
When I was on the pension board, I had to fight to go to grade.
Now we have 19.
Oh, my goodness.
It's great.
Do you still live in the district?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I like to move, but I also like my house, and I like that the kids can come home and
Yeah.
get room.
Yeah.
Live on a farm.
Oh, sounds beautiful.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, I will.
You made salad.
I did the salad and the garlic bread, but it's a mix, and we get it, we love it so
Yeah.
much. It's
It's
kale
like a
with the
broccoli
cranberry and
salad.
like a pop leaf, yeah.
But it's not broccoli.
Is it kale?
It's got, kale, I think it's got shaved, maybe Brussels sprouts in there, so it's got that like firmer, yeah, but it's, when we had it and my dad was raving about it, it was like, whoa,
You know
that's
it's
just,
gonna be good.
can't stand salad.
Well, again, thank you for having us. I'm Terry Morgan, and I think I've met everybody this evening, but I appreciate you taking the time to walk through a lot of good information and hopefully good conversation. That's really what we want to do in this next section, is a lot of the slides Stacy and Stacy have probably seen in previous workshops, but I think it's good for the new board members to have a chance to have the discussion. Is this how we do it? Do we want to change it? Is this working, kind of thing? And one of the things that Jude set up very aptly was we developed an onboarding checklist. And so we would suggest that new board members at one point in time should go through all of these items with superintendent or treasurer and make sure that you have some familiarity. I mean, there's no way that you can ever learn everything, even in a first term. So having some knowledge about the questions to ask, sorry. I'm wondering what you guys are. Having some knowledge about the questions to ask is always a good thing. And next step, we're doing one for superintendents and treasurers, so.
Oh, that's
we should do
great.
that one.
Is this new, fall 25?
Yeah, we just put it together. And it happened because Christy, Quinn, and I as consultants are all former board members, and we didn't have any onboarding.
No.
I mean, nobody does that. You kind of just get thrown into it. So we sat down and thought, what are all the things like we hadn't even
Yeah.
heard of
Yeah.
before we started? And so.
This is
tried to put
great.
that list together. Yeah.
Well, and Chris, did you do one of the OSBA sessions for like new member onboarding when you came on 2 years ago?
I did a webinar one. I
Okay.
couldn't make it to the,
Like the
but they also
weekend
had like
one?
webinar short versions. I did like one of those.
Okay,
Yeah.
No, I did like a finance one too.
okay.
And I think we're gonna have sessions recorded because the Northeast and Southwest sessions of new board member training got canceled. So we're gonna put some of those sessions online so you can watch them at your own leisure. Due to the snowstorm.
I remember.
And we're also offering them, and I'll put in a plug, shameless plug, at Board Leadership Institute is May 8th and 9th, and it's only for board members. And we are gonna repeat at least 3 or 4 of those sessions from election to action again. So you'd have the opportunity to hear them fresh. And it's a day and a half, all day Friday, Saturday morning, of breakout sessions that we feel are a little bit different than you might have heard at Capitol Conference, or at least new information for board members that are just coming on. And I think we have interesting speakers for those too, so it's a good session to attend.
Well, just a plug for your website too, because there's so much really helpful information on there that you all keep updated as there are legislative changes. So you probably are on there, but if, Jonathan and Jude, if you don't have an account for your OSBA account yet, because it does require a login, I think, for a lot of accessing a lot of those
And
things.
Mike would line that up.
Yep,
right?
yep,
Yeah.
so they have webinars on there, there's sessions, active sessions you can sign up for, recorded things, but really some of those, like, 1 to 2 page, what's your role of a board member in
The
a school
fact
levy?
sheets are
Yeah, the
really
fact
good,
sheets
too.
are so
Yeah.
helpful, so
Yeah.
it's a great resource.
Yeah, we think so, so thank you. So we're gonna cover some of these things, and like I said, I'm gonna talk about best practice, but I also would like you to have the conversation about, do we do it this way? Should we change what we're doing as we go through them? And certainly Christie set the stage for your role is governance, that 30,000-foot level. And one of the most important things, as she mentioned too, is making sure that you are following your policies and being accountable to your stakeholders. And those things will come along if you are following good governance practices, and that's what we're gonna talk a little bit about. So by revised code, your responsibilities are to employ and evaluate superintendent and treasurer. All Are you happy with the way you've been doing evaluations?
Yeah, I think, the suggested calendar is helpful, and James and Mike and I talked about that this week, about it'd be great to like set up and kind of standardize, like set up meetings even at our organizational session, kind of like slate that for exactly
Put the
what
date
meetings
on
would
the
be.
calendar,
Yeah,
yeah.
so if we're gonna incorporate our own self-assessment, but certainly with theirs for their annual and then the mid-year, because it's like months go by and then there's a board transit and it's like, wait a minute, how, it's the end of the year and we didn't do that.
Putting out fires and the things
Yeah.
that we really are on the back burner don't get moved forward.
Yeah.
Do you like the form you're using? Are you using some kind of form?
We do use the form.
Yeah, we have a form, it's based off the superintendent and treasurer standards, and then individual goals that can be set.
Well, and the one thing that I will send you, because we took that form and we added a column for the district goals. And so then what you'd be adding are your strategies that you would like to use to develop those goals. So we think it's just a little more complete, and I'll send those to you so you can
That'd be great.
decide if you'd like to use those.
Thank you.
Approving annual budget appropriation, the necessary finances, certainly that is critical. And I'm sure Mike is keeping you on target on what you need to be talking about and what's coming on the horizon. The needed, safe, and appropriate facilities, we really kind of took that for granted until COVID came along, and then all of a sudden realized, can we do remote learning? And do we have the facilities that encompass good learning centers? And I think that I see from your comments, that's kind of where you are right now, is our buildings are older, we need to talk about better learning centers. But again, laying some of this groundwork first, whether you're setting a culture of trust and transparency with the board, will also help then your community buy into the fact that it's time to do these things. Some of the practical responsibilities are certainly considering, approving, or rejecting recommendations from the superintendent. And one of the things that we always hear at the new board member training is, I ran for the board because I think they just rubber stamp what the superintendent wants. And the reality is that maybe you got such good information, you got the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you sorted through, and you came to the same conclusion as the superintendent's recommendation. So one of the things that we really encourage everyone to do is to have that conversation, to say, I looked through all the options, I agree that this recommendation is the best that we can pass, something. We don't want meetings to go till 11 o'clock at night, but you have to show that you're being thoughtful, you have to get credit for doing your homework, you have to be able to give a reason why you're voting the way that you're voting. And that really changed, I think, probably during COVID, is that so many boards were just very rote, right? Make a motion, second, vote, you have to have a president that every time asks for discussion. So there's a first and a second, and then there's discussion. And somebody say something, right? We could buy the property at Fifth and Main, but I'm not sure that's our best. So I sorted through, I asked questions of Dr. Tapman, and I feel ready to go with his recommendation. Again, showing that you're being thoughtful about your decisions. Goals and objectives, we touched on a little bit with your strategic planning. We'll talk about that later. Certainly student achievement, that evaluation you saw, that's a need from your self-assessment to keep informed about those programs. Informing the public. One of the things that is certainly your responsibility is being that conduit between the community and the superintendent. But it is also your responsibility to make sure you're answering those with chain of command, right? You're always gonna hear complaints, and so your first question will be, well, did you talk to the teacher? And usually they're gonna say, well, no, because I don't want the teacher to be harder on my third grader, but that's where the conversation needs to start. And so if those conversations are hard, maybe you suggest that this person asks for the principal to set in with the teacher to have that conversation. But it can't just come straight to the superintendent or come straight to the board. And in reality, that's probably half or more of your public participation is they got an answer from the superintendent and they didn't like the answer. And they think if they bring it to the board, they'll get a different answer. So making sure you are mindful of the chain of command and then letting Dr. Chapman know. I think it's really important that you keep him informed of what you're hearing out there, because these issues will bubble up and end in his lap probably, and he's probably already had discussions about them. But I don't know, quick text or phone call, how you'd like to receive them, but we would encourage you to make sure that you're sharing those conversations that you have out in the community. And again, policies, I forget, are you OSBA? Good. There is no way that you cannot have a third-party facilitator for policies. These days, things are so complicated, and, you know, they sneeze at the State House, and it's gonna change 6 of your policies. So making sure that you have someone who keeps sending you, okay, now you need to do this, now you need to do this, is really critical. Most important, of course, is being accountable to your mission and vision, holding others accountable. Again, I like your mission statement, and that is certainly the trend, is to be short and sweet. You know, mission statements used to be like 3 sentences long and had every buzzword you could think of in them. And it meant nothing. It lost all of its momentum. So we do like that you made yours the 3 E's. So governance versus process. Certainly the board is going to set that policy, talk about what the issues are, and then you're going to trust your CFO and your CEO to carry out whatever they need to do to make that successful or to make that happen. If that's the issue, that there's a disconnect there, that's a totally different conversation than just staying at the governance level, right? You need to be able to know that when you direct superintendent or treasurer, that will happen in some form, and there will be some kind of report back. I don't know, do you do like a Friday report to the board?
I do a weekly report, yes.
Yeah,
Move to
and that's the
Thursday.
perfect time to say, you know, I know at the board you decided you wanted me to reach out and do, and I did, kind of thing. And again, the other side of that is that you do need to be able to make informed decisions. It's important that both superintendent and treasurer give you all the sides to the story, so you want them to make a recommendation, but you also don't want to be caught that somebody said, well, why didn't you buy the property at Fifth and Main? And you're like, well, I didn't even know it was an option. So again, it's a two-way street. That communication from them is as important as the communication from you back to them. We talked about chain of command, how important that is. Transitioning from candidate to elected official is always an interesting transition. And the first thing that we say is, of course, remember that you are now one of 5. As an individual, you don't carry that power of a board of education. The power is in a meeting with the majority of you there. And it's hard because I'm sure like the first week you were elected, you started getting calls. I can remember my first week was 11 o'clock at night. He calls and says, why have they canceled school? Because the transportation director and the superintendent made that decision because of the road. You know, it's again, you want to be responsive and you want to show that you care, but you have to make sure that you're following that chain of command. The onboarding checklist we talked about, and making sure that there's understanding from the veteran board members that new board members are going to have more questions. We would encourage you to do as much homework as you can outside of the meeting, calling superintendent or treasurer and getting your questions answered. But it's okay then in the meeting to say, you know, I had a question about whether this was going to be the appropriate cost, and I called Mike and I got an answer. Mike, can you tell them the answer that you gave to me? Again, making sure that people know that you had questions, but you asked them in the appropriate way. You didn't just surprise or try and catch superintendent or treasurer. The other thing is, too, we have lots of board members who run because they care, but they also usually sometimes can have a personal agenda. And hopefully that personal agenda is they want to do what's best for kids, right? The focus is on kids. But I can tell you, when I sat on the ESC at Delaware Union Counties, we had a new board member start, and he looked around the room and he said, well, where's Pat? And I said, Pat's the superintendent at Career Center. And he actually said, oh, I wanted to get her fired. I ran to the wrong board. And we were like floored. Okay, that is your personal agenda.
Joke's
You're
on
gonna
you.
share that.
Welcome to public service.
Yes, I mean, it was crazy.
Wow.
And we hear so many times that, they want to get the football coach fired, or they want to get the superintendent or treasurer fired. And so, making sure that you are serving for the right reasons, that you keep your focus on kids. The other thing too, and Jude touched on this, is learning about each other's filters and how you process information and getting to know each other. I was communications director in my real life for the county commissioners, and we had, of course, 3 commissioners, and we were getting 2-1 votes, and it didn't matter if it was yes or no, it was always 2-1. And so we started talking about how this one person processed information, and we all realized it didn't matter any emotion at all, or whether it was the popular kind of thing to do. He only made decisions based on facts and data and statistics. And so once we understood that as staff and we were able to get him that information in ways that met his filter that he could process, we started getting more 3-0 votes and more, agreement on things and approaches. So again, it's important to realize how you process that information and making sure that you do get your questions answered so that you feel like you can vote the way you need to vote. Building trust with your administrators, certainly superintendent is a CEO and the treasurer is the CFO, that no surprises. It is always okay for superintendent or treasurer to say, I don't know, but I'll find out. But if it's really something that could be helpful to your decision-making or could help with transparency, you let them know ahead of time so they can come prepared with an answer and be able to have a good discussion about it or bring the statistics that they need. And again, once the majority decides, you have to respect the will of the majority of the board. And like Christy said, we don't want you to have to vote yes or no when you don't feel that way because the majority is. But you have to be able to say, I didn't agree with buying the property at 5th and Main, but the majority voted, we're moving forward. Something that says, I didn't vote with the majority, but I had good reasons, and here's why, but we're moving forward. And I saw the repercussion of not doing this. We have a city council with 7 members, and 6 of them, well, they all got the same information about putting an income tax levy on the ballot. 6 of them voted to do it, 1 voted not to do it. And she had really good reasons, and she went through and she had statistics, and she proved her point, but it still was the majority voting to do, put it on the ballot, which was fine, except that she went out and started the campaign against the issue. So it never stood a chance because people automatically think, oh, what does she know that they don't know? Or what are they hiding from us? So again, even if your decision wasn't in the majority, you've got to be able to say, we're moving forward.
I want to add real quick on there. So the agenda, just for, I think, Chris, you're aware of it, for agenda setting for meetings, Mike and James work together to rough draft an agenda, and then traditionally meet with the president the Wednesday before the meeting. We go over the agenda. So that's a chance I can ask questions. So I'm kind of, again, just kind of representing the board, but our perspective, what do we know and understand? What questions do we have? And that's a helpful time. I think Jody did the same, where if there's maybe something that's new, I can say, I don't know if we have enough information about that. Maybe if we pull it, because we do use consent agenda. So if it's something that maybe we want to talk about, so we can drop it down to the discussion session. But I would ask that, and I know people travel and everybody's working and are busy, if you do have a chance, once that hits, so we meet on a Wednesday morning, James gets it uploaded and it's out, Mike work on it. So I think by Wednesday, Thursday, you all have a chance to review before it goes public. even if you don't have a chance to review it until sometime Monday before the meeting, just take a look at it so that when we come into a meeting, if you have a question for me, for Mike, for James, don't hesitate to call and ask to get some more information on it. And then you can ask the question again, certainly ask the question again in the meeting. But if it's especially something we may want to consider pulling out of the consent agenda, we can do that before, even if the agenda changes. But by the time we get into the meeting, we're approving the agenda for the meeting. We've already bumped that down because we know we want to spend a little bit of time talking about it and exploring that topic. So that would just be my
Oh, yeah, that's a
request.
whole slide that's coming up.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
No, that's good. And you know, the story that I had from this one, I was continually amazed when I was on the Olentangy board. We had one board member. This was back in the old days where we would get paper packets and the custodian would deliver them to our houses. She literally would come into every meeting and rip open the packet in the meeting.
Oh, my
And we're
goodness.
like, at least rip it open in the car. Like you glanced at something before you came in. So again, so important to have that input on the agenda. And it is your agenda. But the reality is superintendent and treasurer have to put the items on there. Board members would never know what needs talked about and the deadlines and all those kind of things. But you do have to be able to have input to it. And that's, it says this is our agenda because we do see it ahead of time and we do have an opportunity to have input.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, and just, I want to add that the agenda goes live to the public Saturday, when we meet on Monday, Saturday before that meeting. So once we hit that Saturday, if we still want to make changes, I'm not comfortable changing it outside of the meeting. So when we get to the meeting and that first action is approve the agenda as amended. Because that way then the public sees, they had their agenda posted Saturday, I looked at it Saturday, but when I got to the meeting on Monday night, it was different. Well, we're not gonna do that,
Yep.
because that's not transparent. So we can change it at that point in the public session.
Yep, good point. Yep, thank you.
And that's really good. You have Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. That's a lot more time than most boards have to really review and go over the materials. So I'm glad you have those 3 days. Are you using Board Docs?
Board Docs, yeah.
Yeah.
We could thank John Jones, because he was, I wanna see it sooner, I wanna see it sooner. We moved the meeting from a
learned well.
Friday to a Wednesday. Yeah.
Well, and you even moved up when you do your board report, because it was hitting Friday, and then it was the weekend, and we didn't want to bother if we had a question. You know, we didn't want to bother James on the weekend, so he even backed it up, so we've
Yeah.
got another day to review.
That's really, that's good. Very considerate.
Mhm.
So again, the other thing that kind of isn't sometimes a hard transition for new board members, particularly if you have kids in the school or you have been a volunteer in the school, is the reality that you now wear your board hat 24/7. You never get to take it off. You, as humble as you are, you do cause a little bit of a stir, not because they're afraid you're gonna catch them doing something, but because they want their kids to look great and their classroom to look great. And they, want to make sure they're putting their best foot forward if there's a board member in the building. So we would say, at least best practice, and I'm not telling you to change it if it's working, but if you are going in as a parent, that's all you do. You sign in as a parent, you tell the admin, just here to watch my son's concert. But if you want to go in as a board member, that you schedule that through James. That you make it more official, so James knows, the principal knows, and you're, ready and they're prepared to have you come through as a board meeting. If you want to see the new Chem Lab, again, it's thoughtful communication about what your plan is, not just walking the halls. That's not a good thing.
And I would say, even I do that, like, the first stop I make is the principal's office, so he knows I'm not sneaking around, but he knows I'm there, I usually tell him what I'm doing, and not that I'm asking his permission, but
Yeah.
he knows what I'm doing, so it's building that trust.
That's one of the hardest things when we do superintendent searches and we do focus groups. The first thing we hear is, oh, we never see the superintendent. And yet if the superintendent goes in all the time, they're like, oh, he's checking on us all the time. You are in an absolutely no-win situation on that one, yeah. So again, I know you guys have seen Andy videos before. Andy's our challenging
Oh, are we gonna
board
bring
member.
Andy?
So
Yay.
we like to use a couple Andy videos to illustrate.
situation to talk to you about. I got a phone call from my wife's best friend, Jill Johnson.
Well, let's hear it.
Well, her little girl, Betsy, has been assigned to Miss Robinson's class this year.
Okay.
Jill met with Miss Robinson the first day of school. And she was disappointed with what Miss Robinson has planned for the children this year. See, Betsy can already do the things she plans to teach.
To make matters worse, Miss Robinson's classroom had no decoration at all.
No
Have you seen
bulletin
these, Julie?
boards, nothing interesting hanging on the walls.
Love these.
That doesn't sound like Miss Robinson. So Joe goes to the principal and asks him to
Reassign Betsy. He refuses, so she asked if I could help.
I see.
So I went down to the school, and sure enough, Miss Robinson's room had nothing in it at all. All the other classrooms are colorful and bright. I can see why a parent wouldn't want their child in that room. So, can I tell Jill that you'll get Betsy moved?
So of course, totally fine that he took the call, he listened to the mother, took the concerns. Next step, to call the superintendent and say, this is what I'm hearing, this is what she's concerned about, and that should have been it, right? Then it's the superintendent's responsibility, again, to go through that chain of command with teacher and principal. And he should not have visited the building to check on the classroom, because that's exactly why people get paranoid when school board members come into the building. So. And again, this relates to relaying student issues and community concerns. The thing that can build trust the best is being accessible. I love that Christy talked about how you should be out at events and people should see you. Again, remembering that you're only one board member, so you're not gonna say, oh, I'll fix that for you, or, we can make that happen. But remembering too that even in emails, and I don't know how you handle emails, but if you would all get the same email, we would say the best practice is to thank the person for the email, because of course it was sent to you, you're gonna thank them for the email, but then you're gonna forward it to James. And he might get 5 forwards, but again, it's usually a running the district question. It's not governing the district. And so making sure that he has the ability to do the answer. He doesn't reply all to you, you don't reply all to each other. Again, keeps it from a violation of sunshine law. But it's important that the person know that you received it and that you forward it to the superintendent for action. Does that feel comfortable? And again, having those organizations like Rotary, the different service organizations, connections, business partnerships. Do you do any kind of like state of the schools presentation?
Through GSP, we do a state of the community, and we're invited to present it, yes.
Perfect. And that's the kind of thing that it gives you the ability to put the positive stories out there, right? Your negative stories are always gonna be on wildfire, but those positive stories are the ones that you need to remind people of. So the more opportunities that you have to do that. And to do that before you think about a bond issue or a levy issue. The coffee chats are always a campaign strategy. We would say they should be all the time strategy. Your time is limited, but again, some strategic thoughtfulness about how we connect with our older adults in the district, or how we connect with the businesses in our district. And again, remembering that the superintendent is running the district and the board members are governing, but making sure that you do listen. And like Christy said, there's usually like 6 sides to the story, right? You hear one thing. I remember one of the big issues when I was on the Olentangy board was they decided that they wanted to drug test the athletes. And back then, that was like huge. And every time somebody talked to me, I thought, oh, that's a really good point. And that's a really good point. There were so many slides to sort through that. Part of me wanted to just abstain, but I couldn't do that as a good board member. So we had to work through each of those sides to the issue and make the best decision. Again, using the chain of command, doing your homework, like I said, and Stacy reiterated, is reading your agenda, your supplemental materials. participating and realizing that it is not a public meeting. It is a meeting of the board in public. You would not ever have to be filming, allow public participation, but we would say that's not a good practice. That is exactly what you want to do, to hear from the public, but that can't be disruptive to you having a meeting and getting your meeting done. Again, we, particularly during COVID, had a lot of people who thought they could shout questions from the audience or ask specific questions of board members. It's important that you have a president who really can control that type of meeting, who makes sure that people are heard, but it's done in an appropriate way. So, talking about meetings, the Open Meetings Act is prearranged discussion of public business of a public body by a majority of the public's members. And it doesn't matter what you call it. So when you set your have your organizational meeting and you set your calendar for the year, those are all regular meetings. Anything that you add in after that is a special. Whether you call it a retreat, a work session, whatever you want to call it, they're either regular or special, and your treasurer then notices them appropriately. One of the things that we did get clarified, and again, I touched on with email, particularly because email and social media are fairly new in the world of school education. Over the years, boards were kind of lax about particularly using text and texting a majority of the school board members. And so one of the things that happened is a true clarification of electronic media through White versus King. And actually, this was Olentangy. I wasn't on the board, but I was involved at the time with the school. And Adam White, good heart, really, good board member, had the best interest, but he decided that 2 assistant coaches were using vans inappropriately. Fine, again, you go to the superintendent and share, and he didn't. He came to a board meeting, and Olentangy usually has media from Columbus, and he proceeded to say that named the 2 assistant coaches, said that they were violating the community's trust and they were committing fraud by using taxpayer dollars inappropriately. It just went on, and no one had any idea about it. So after the meeting, when again, they tried to reel it back in by saying we will do an investigation, but they started to do a kind of news release letter to the editor about how this really needed a complete investigation. We didn't know that Adam was going to do this kind of thing. Well, they were doing it with 4 board members by email. So they sent the copy out and they said, do you like this sentence? Should we put this in? Should we add this? Huge violation. And Adam found out, of course, and took him to Common Pleas Court. And Olentangy lost, and Adam won. And they appealed. And so it went to 5th District Court of Appeals. Adam won. Olentangy appealed. Went to the Supreme Court, and Adam won again. Because the Supreme Court said nothing in the plain language of the revised code expressly mandates that a meeting occur face-to-face. To the contrary, it provides that any prearranged discussion can qualify as a meeting. So, in a roundabout way, it was good that the clarification has come about, that email and text are the same as talking in person, so that was a good thing, I guess. It was not fun to go through. So again, we've talked about this, and I think your process is working great for you, that you have that opportunity, particularly with Board Docs, makes it really easy to see the agenda, so that's all working great. Is this how you are seated at your board meetings?
For the most part.
Yeah.
Good.
Or
Some kind of you, because one of the things, the visual problem that we've seen with board members, boards, districts that have done this for a long time is that they're setting their board members in a straight line, and it looks like you're there for the public, and that's exactly right. You're leaning back to see somebody, or leaning forward to see somebody. So again, saying that this is your meeting and having the discussion where you can see each other and, have those questions and comments back and forth makes it seem like it really is a meeting of the board in public, so that's good. And you've got your traditions of doing the pledge. Have you been meeting here now, or is this new?
This is our first time here.
Okay,
I
and so
think-
you'll do it here?
I think so. I like this a lot better than some of the
It's
other
cozy
ones.
here.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
The auditorium's a problem because every month there's a student event that we're bumping out. And then, the high school, we were there for a while, but now the students have recaptured that as like a tiger unit.
Okay.
So there's a lot of furniture and stuff.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I like this venue.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's a better venue.
And if the high school cafeteria would be, there's too many events going on at the gym, so this is like the least disruptive place, except for staff needing to set it up, but
Yeah.
it's accessible. We don't have to worry that folks can park right outside and get in here easily.
Right.
And of our 3 buildings, they go to the high school a lot for athletics
Mhm.
and arts. They definitely go to the auditorium in McCormick for the arts and athletics. There's no real reason for the public to come into Woodland, so this is another reason for them to come and see the building.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, where do you think you're gonna go for executive session? Would you ask people to leave, or would the board get up and?
We have a classroom, like an extra classroom that
Okay.
we have set up. Yep.
Perfect. That is one of the things, we have a couple troublemakers around the state who are looking for things to catch boards on, and one of them is that executive session listening outside the door, so that if you ask the people to leave and you stay in this bigger room, then they have an opportunity to hear, and so I'm so glad you're going to a more private, confidential room. Again, the 6 legal reasons that you can go in, and as Christy said, you absolutely can do the evaluation discussion with superintendent and treasurer in executive session. I think it's important do you put an executive session on every agenda, whether you need it or not?
We list it, but if needed, and then we have the reasons
Okay.
that we can announce, yeah.
Because one of the things, another kind of transparency tip, is that if you don't have an expectation of needing it, you don't even put it on the agenda. Because what we're finding is people believe that you kind of zoom through the whole meeting to get to the good stuff in executive session. So just a thought, if you make sure, you can always add one by motion if you need to, but if needed, covers that too. And guess, obviously, it is the board's executive session, and you can invite people in, but we would say that the best practice is that your superintendent and treasurer are always in executive session, unless you're doing one or the other's evaluation. You might want to invite attorney in, but if you want someone who is a teacher or part of the union and they've asked for time with the board, that should be with superintendent and treasurer in the room, and has to be very planned that you don't have the conversation in executive session, right? They are only coming in to present their side, and then they leave before you ask any questions or have any kind of conversation. So again, protecting the time that you have in executive session to have those good discussions.
Explain that better for me. So,
Yeah.
so let's say we had to have a staff member come in. They can present and then we can ask them questions, is that what you're saying?
Well, here's what happens. First of all, it should come through the superintendent. If the teacher asks for time with this board, the superintendent is gonna say, Mrs. Smith would like to come in and talk to the board. Again, they're both gonna be there. She's gonna present. A clarifying question might be okay, but the problem with that first question is it starts a discussion. And you cannot be discussing with her in the room an issue that is then gonna be a decision that you need to vote on. So it is complicated. We really would recommend that not happen very often at all, because it undermines your superintendent too. The trust has got to be there between the teachers and the staff, and the superintendent as the ultimate boss. And you can't set the expectation that they can go directly to the board and have a different decision. That's what we're worried about. And of course,
It didn't happen in the last 4 years.
We've
Not
not
happened
had-
on one occasion.
Yeah.
We had a community member parent with a curriculum appeal that came up to the board. It was all done in public.
Yeah, but we've never had a
No.
staff member, or anybody like that, come come into, like, request an audience with the board for
Well,
any
they
reason.
would
So,
still have to,
but yeah.
it would still have to be a reason, if they wanted to go into executive session, it would still have to be for a reason that you're allowed to go
Oh,
into
absolutely.
executive, which is pretty narrow,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yeah.
like,
It'd
either
be like if
defending
he was
themselves in a complaint,
terminating a
yes.
staff member.
Yeah.
That's when we've seen it happen. But it's that one last appeal they think they
Yeah.
can make.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's use that example then. So terminating someone, they want to appeal to the board. We would listen. Thank you, and then we would discuss or.
Again,
the
I think you
merits of
take
it.
the lead from the superintendent. If the superintendent says, I want you all to hear her
Uh-huh.
side of the story, and then you can help understand my recommendation. But if they're just coming in because they don't like the decision,
Right.
then it's not gonna be a good situation.
Gotcha. I just want to make sure I understand.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
all right, thank you.
And we'd also follow policy and like collective bargaining agreements too, which they're part of a union, so like that, there's probably language in there too that would dictate the process
Which
for
is
that.
exactly
Yeah.
why it
We
should go to
rely,
the
yeah.
superintendent, because you know he's followed all those policies and agreements.
Exactly.
And again, the confidentiality. You have got to know that when you go in there, that you can have those frank discussions and be able to talk about things that even when you come out aren't shared with spouse or anyone. It undermines the culture and the trust of the board as well as with the superintendent and treasurer. And a lot of times, what gets out is only one piece of the story, right? And the decision is ultimately gonna be something different. So, again, I have an Andy video about this.
Andy, glad I ran into you. Hey. Want to know what's going on with the school board? Has the entire board gone nuts?
I'd be surprised if we have. Why would you say that, or is that just your way of supporting your local school
You
board?
know very well what I'm talking about. How can the school board stand by and let Hank Fisher be suspended without giving him a reason why? Everybody knows he keeps the high school students in line, no drugs, no alcohol. We won't find another principal like him.
And nobody hates us more than I do. And the entire board sees it the same way.
Well, if that's the case, then let's put him back on his job and move on. The community's in an uproar. Nobody knows what's going on, or even why Hank's been suspended. Not even Hank.
Oh, Hank knows why he was suspended,
He said he didn't. How do you know he does?
because we discussed it in closed executive session.
Oh, so why was he suspended?
We're not supposed to talk about it outside of a closed session, okay? But there is a good reason for his suspension.
Well, I can't see any reason to let a man like Hank go.
He was accused of sexual harassment by 3 teachers. Hey, don't tell anybody you heard that from me.
You know I will tell him.
And again, it's so hard because when it's gonna happen, it's gonna be an ugly kind of situation, and you're gonna wanna justify why you made this decision, and you can't have those conversations. And one of the other things that I would say about executive session is that if you allow that teacher to ask one question and they get an answer, then the teacher leaves thinking this is how it's gonna go, how the decision's gonna go. So again, it's just snippets that it is so much better that you listen and then have the discussion after. So again, timely and equal information for all. There are very few times that the board president should have information ahead of all of you. If it's a highly confidential or, extremely, extreme emergency, James might call Stacy and run some things by her, but then very quickly after that, Stacy or someone from James's office should be letting you know, there's a fire in the parking lot, but it's contained, the fire department's here, and no students were involved. So again, making sure that you all have the same information at the same time. Having buy-in for the agenda, are you using any kind of is it all,
Consent.
thank you.
Yeah.
With consent, it's for standard operating things, if we have.
Like all the teacher hires.
Yes,
Yeah.
any,
If
the
it's something that's
contracts.
controversial or otherwise, we pull it out to the second.
Good, good. And that's how I would say 90% of the districts are doing it now. There needs to be some efficiency of business. So when you have those things, again, making sure that, you know, if your spouse was a member of the approval in that consent portion, that it's pulled out so that you can abstain. But other than that, that's a good way to handle it. And again, making sure you have that discussion during your meetings. You can't just sit there and just vote. People need to see how you're thinking, how you're making decisions, and that you have good information. The other area that is often a kind of new experience, particularly for board members, is public participation. We would say that it should be called public comment because there's no participation. You don't want participation. You want to be there to listen. And so we checked, and our lawyers say even if your policy says participation, you can put public comment on your agenda. Again, just another one of those little things that helps with perception, that people realize. You can tell them and put your policy out there and tell them we're just here to listen, but it's still hard. And I remember that's one of the hard, first things that I found very hard to do is not to be able to say, oh, I'm sorry you're going through that, or, you know, that ask a question. But the reality is, once you ask that question, open that door, it starts that conversation, and that's not the time to have that. And again, most of the issues are running the district issues. They're not governing the district. So one of the important things that we feel like with public participation these days is to have a visual timer. Are you doing that? Even like on your screen, or a timer that Stacy would have, because you want to keep to your policy, which is, I assume, 3 minutes, or half an hour
Five.
total.
For 5
Oh, we
minutes.
do 5.
Half hour, yeah.
Okay, well, that's
But half
interesting.
hour total.
Yeah, half
so.
hour total. You have to be able to treat everyone the same, and that's another issue that people are going around the state trying to catch is, you know, you gave this person 5 minutes and 3 seconds, but you gave this person less than 5 minutes. And it's also kind of a nice way that when that alarm goes off, you can say, oh, I'm sorry, your 5 minutes are up, will the next person come forward? Just what we're finding is the best practice.
And just for like institutional history over the last couple years, and most meetings we have no comment. We've had a couple meetings where there's been like a hot topic, like Likewise was a hot topic, right? And in those situations, the board considered whether we would waive so that everybody would still stick to 5 minutes, but if it exceeded a half hour, that was okay. And then it's been relatively orderly in that regard. I can't think of a meeting where we've not allowed somebody to say what they needed to say, or that 5 minutes wasn't more than enough time to say what you needed to say.
Sure.
We do ask for them to fill out a form when they come in. We did move it, I think when we started, public comment was at the end of the meetings. We moved it up to the front.
Good.
So that if somebody comes and there's information they want to share, they're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but if they just wanted to come and share information and then move on, they can. But then Mike manages those. It also, they then don't need to, I mean, you call them up, I think, by the form.
Yeah.
So we know who it is, and then they don't need to disclose their address, like we've recorded some information there.
Right.
But it seems to have been working for
Yeah.
the length of time we've been doing it.
Yeah, and even when we had those, like Likewise comments, like I would do the timer on my phone, it never really got, there was maybe one person who kind of flirted with the 5 minutes,
Yeah.
but it never really went longer than that, yet at least.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm sure heard the Brian Ames stories, and that's one of the things he's looking for, so just FYI, be careful. But a couple of things to follow up. When you do have a big issue like that, I have seen it work where we have a pro microphone and a con microphone, so that you can do one after the other, which again makes people feel like you're hearing both sides to the story, and it also kind of allows the group to feel like you're listening to both sides of the story The other thing is that you really don't have to collect address, because again, they don't have to live in your district to speak. Do you require that, if you have it at the beginning, does that item that they want to talk about have to be on your agenda?
No.
Good.
We do not restrict anything like that, no.
Good.
And the only reason we give people the opportunity to list their address and phone number, if I remember right, was that then if James needs to follow up or Mike needs to follow up, you know, who it was and how to get a hold of them.
I would just put optional
Right.
on there, unless if you don't have that, again, because you can't stop them from talking, so. And the other thing, do you put your did you say you lay your policy out with the sign-in sheet too, a copy of your policy?
I think it's on the
think it's on
form.
the form.
Because we're finding that's helpful too, that if people have the policy before they sit down, they can pick it
Yeah.
up and see how things are gonna go,
I
so.
think, is it in the agenda too? I think it's listed in the agenda, so if they choose to pick up a printed copy of the agenda or they see it online, it does
Okay.
state on there
Perfect.
how long they have.
So when
Did you
people
question?
come, they introduce themselves, right?
To make a comment?
Yeah.
So they would have fill out a form
They'll-
first.
Yeah, they'll
So
fill out.
that's public information, all right?
Mhm.
So if Joe Smith comes and talks, we would know Joe Smith. It's not like it's secret or.
Yeah, so like, they would fill the form out, I put them in kind of the order received,
Mhm.
and then I would say, Joe Smith is next.
I mean, there's nothing that prevents somebody from not using their actual name, right? I mean, if they really were trying to conceal that, but it honestly hasn't been an issue most
No, I
of
was
the
just-
time,
I
yeah.
didn't think it was, I was just,
Mhm.
I think some districts have more excitement than
Oh,
others.
I don't even want to start on horror stories.
Yeah.
Yes,
Some
I'm
districts
so
get
glad
into
things are
trying
going
to
so well.
restrict it more, that it has to be, some require you to file in advance of the meeting. So
Yeah.
if you haven't emailed them and you show up at a meeting, you can't speak, or
Right.
they restrict it to the topic, and it just gets into
Free
First
speech.
Amendment, like, it gets messy, so now
Yeah.
ours has worked, and hey,
I
keep
think
it
the
for now.
one that we cringed on a few times is, we had I remember we had an older gentleman who came in who had like strong feelings about, it was like landscape or something. And it was innocuous, but it was like, it was becoming like a two-way discussion and like not really flowing like public comment should, which in isolation wasn't a big deal. But how you kind of have to treat everybody on the same process. So that was the part that I think we were like, you know, because in a way, like, you just can't, if you do that with that one
Yeah.
gentleman on one topic that
If
it's
they're
fine
good.
with, right, you open the door.
Over landscape.
Absolutely right.
Yeah,
It's like
winning
weeds.
weeds,
Yeah.
pulpit, yeah, McCormick,
Weeds.
but, and I think with different presidents have had different, you know, so I think level of familiarity sometimes, but again, in the last couple of years, it has not, it's, the comment from usually a president is just thanking the person for coming in and speaking, and then if there's something specific that maybe Mike or James is to, you know, follow up with them or something.
And that's exactly
But
what
it's
I
not
was
a
gonna say. The
discussion.
president is really key to public participation, setting the stage to say, you know, we're just here to listen. You all are giving them good eye contact or nodding your head and, you know, showing that you're truly listening, and then thanking them and any kind of follow-up that needs to be done. Absolutely.
You know, my biggest experience, remember critical race theory?
Uh-huh.
I
That
don't
was
think
a
you
bad one.
experienced it here, but,
We did, yeah, we did.
And masks, that got
We
really.
did.
yeah, masks.
It's like I remember it,
Well,
but
Cruz
I
suddenly
don't.
showed up talking about critical race theory, and the board was like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, we've seen some really ugly ones. And that's the other thing that we'd say is, you know, you can have a gavel, or you can try and say, you know, you need to stop talking, but the reality is it usually just fires the crowd up more, right? So there's people that are like, oh, we need to be able to hear the board meeting, take him out, or he has a right to free speech. We had a lot of deputy sheriffs in the back, or city policemen, of those mask meetings particularly. The reality is, we would say if it gets to that point, that the board just recess
Yep.
and leave the room. It is much better for the board to leave than to try and have somebody hauled out of your meeting,
Indeed.
which again is what this looked like. So a couple scenarios. A growing district must face redistricting. Board member John is facing lots of criticism from his neighbors whose children will be bused to a school building not close to their neighborhood. He knows other board members think the chosen option will be fair to all students in the district. How should he and the board move forward? Real life from Olentangy, let me tell you. I still have mom that won't speak to me because we took her child across Route 23. But everything that you do, including this kind of situation, has to be based on facts and that discussion of those facts and the presentations. If you're thinking about doing something big like a bond issue or like redistricting to different buildings, you have got to have a number of presentations over a number of meetings so that you have the opportunity to look at all the good, the bad, and the ugly possibilities and to have good discussion about that. Still okay for John to vote no, but he's gonna say, I'm voting no because I don't believe that children should go to schools that aren't in their neighborhood. But the reality is, you can't do that and be fair to all the students in the district. And this is actually how I ended up running for Olentangy, was because we had been approached to, I wasn't on the board, but they had been approached to pass a TIF and have the Polaris Mall and Polaris Amphitheater come into Delaware County, which was huge. It would provide so many opportunities and so many tax dollars. And 3 of the board members actually lived in the property adjacent to the Polaris Amphitheater. So of course, noise, traffic, lights, they just couldn't do it. And all of their neighbors were there and they had little kids crying, like, please don't do this. So they voted it down 3-2. And 3 of us ran saying, we really think this is an important part of the whole district's benefit. And so we ran saying that we would support that TIF because we needed the roads, we needed the parks, we needed the tax dollars that would come from those 2 entities. So again, you have to think of the whole district, and it's hard because you're gonna have, family and relatives and friends saying, you gotta do this, you can't do this. So, committees. So tell me a little bit about, do you have committees? What are they?
Yeah, we have superintendent and treasurer committees, so we have a finance
Perfect.
committee, a facilities committee, academic instruction committee,
Page over.
policy and handbook committee, so.
So what board committees do you have then? Any?
None.
Good.
And then we have representatives that serve on
Absolutely.
other community organizations.
You can have board members all over the superintendent and treasurer committees, just not a majority of the board members. But what we're finding is that gives you a little more flexibility. You don't have to notice the meeting, you don't have to have an agenda, you don't have to have minutes, it doesn't have to come before the board. And a lot of times, those committees like finance and policy, and particularly facilities, if you get to that point, they want to be able to have those conversations about all the options before all those options get out there and people make a decision ahead of time. So it is, I think, as long as you have a trusting relationship, that board members who serve on these committees or the outside parks or whatever, that they come back and do regular reports about what the board involvement is, that's really key. So that, the other board members don't feel like they're being left out of anything, or that a single board member is making any kind of decisions, because you can't make decisions in those committees. That's the time for discussion. I was at a school district and they were talking about committees, and they had one gentleman who was serving on a facilities committee, and he proceeded to announce that he just picked out all the door handles for the new high school. And the rest of the board's like, what? Okay, first of all, you're micromanaging, and secondly, who gives you the more right than any of the rest of us to do something like that? So, again, the real key to committees is making sure that the work gets done and reported when it's time and appropriate, and that everybody feels like they're in the know. Committees, reports, or actions are often a good thing for your report, when you do your report to the board, to say, this is what happened.
And I would say some of those most active, the facilities was very active and meeting on a regular basis. Finance has been regular, and those all have members of the community that are on it too. And it's been pretty open. If somebody stepped forward and said, I want to serve on there, like, that's great. And the more the merrier, that people are interested in that. So I think that has felt like it has worked well too, for that
And
community
that's
connection.
the perfect way to handle it, that openness and the ability to be involved is at some level that you want to be. One of the things that we think about committees is, you know, if the issue, if you're getting to a point that it feels too fragmented, then it should be a committee of the whole, right? That the whole board hears about it, the whole board has the discussion, rather than trying to leave it on the shoulders of one board member and to come back and explain what's going on. Social media, again, an interesting transition when you used it for campaigning and you know, put I will bring communication skills to the board. You now realize that you're one of 5, and so we would say best practice is that campaign social media site transitions into just sharing what the school district puts out, that you know that the pictures of the students in the play can be shown because they're not on a list that their parents don't want them to be shown, or that something happened that you are going to let them, you're having a board meeting, you're going to let the people know on your site. You can have personal sites, but again, we say that you should be very, very cautious about talking about school things on your personal site or even the campaign site, because again, you're one of 5. If it's informational, great, but if you try and say, I think we need a new high school, it's gonna start a rabbit hole, and right, they're gonna think, oh, okay, this board member wants the high school, and that's what's gonna happen. They take that as gospel rather than coming to a board meeting and hearing the discussion and seeing what the majority decides.
And I think people have been getting in trouble when they are using that platform, and then somebody is coming on with pointed criticism, which just gotta deal with it, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're not gonna
You're
make
always
everybody
gonna
happy, like,
criticize.
it's okay, gotta learn to roll with it, but then when they block that person,
Yeah.
now they're getting into their own personal liability for those issues and like First Amendment
so much
issues,
easier
and
not to
it's a
stop.
mess, yeah.
And the reality is, if you see something on Facebook that you think is really erroneous information, like, you know, we're gonna put this $80 million bond issue on, then you just let James know, and at the next board meeting, James says during his report, there's been a comment on Facebook out there that I wanna address, rather than you trying as a board member to say, that's not true, because again, it will go down into the criticism and the jumping to conclusions from one board member. Question?
The photo thing. So, are you talking like on the school?
If you went to a baseball game and you took a picture of the players, you can't just automatically post that, because there is a
On
book or,
my own personal?
Right.
right, at all.
So if I take a picture of my kid, I gotta
You're
be careful
fine.
do I have to
Yeah.
be careful who's in the background?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So
Because
just make
now
sure it's-
you are a public official, and is a list of parents who've said they don't want their child to be shown. You don't need to know that, so it's just safer if you share what the school will share, or just your own children.
So when I posted Sydney singing the national anthem, don't do that.
Yeah, I would ask the
Right.
school, like, I think if it's something, it gets tricky, right, when we have
Right.
kids in the district.
Yeah.
But it gets tricky because you are a board member.
What if Heather does it?
Like she's not.
So if my wife did it, it's fine. If I do it, it could be a problem.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it's
Easy,
a
I'm not
fine
on,
line.
I'm not on the line.
Yeah, it's like
So
you
it's-
put a campaign sign in your yard, but she's, you know, doesn't want it there. You've gotta, I think, be cautious that whatever any of your family does,
Mhm.
people are gonna think that you also agree with that.
Okay.
So, it gets, some days are hard being a school board member, because
There's a lot of rules and laws that suddenly apply to you the minute you're sworn in. It's
Yeah.
not just our oath to the constitutions, it is a whole set of rules that, yeah, it curbs, things that you did right before you swore that oath.
Yeah.
Because now you're a public official. So some of those trainings are really helpful. I know you've got those on there. The Sunshine Law training is free. It's available online from the Attorney General's office or the Auditor of State, although theirs might be just the public records training. The Ohio Ethics Law has training that's available on their website, so it's good to be. Because some of it, and if you're in the private sector and you've only ever worked in the private sector, there's things in public sector that make no sense, right? That it's just totally different. It's
Right.
fine in the private sector, it's
Yeah, I had
not okay in
restrictions in the
public.
military, which
Yeah,
changed. I mean, so-
exactly. Yep,
Got a little bit.
yep.
I'd say you could work in the public sector in education, public education, even so.
Still different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
just
It's
things
different
are the
if
way
it's
they
a
are,
township
because that's how they
trustee
are.
or
FERPA
city
rules, you
council.
get Title
Yeah.
IX, you have all these other things that don't exist just in other public sectors. So yes, public education is its own special thing.
The one thing that would be really helpful if you could come to the Board Leadership Institute, we're gonna recreate the legal section of our new board member training. And our attorneys are so good about being very practical about you can do this, you can't do this, and giving those kind of scenarios, even ethical versus legal, so, yeah.
I think it's still, stop me if I'm wrong, Terry, but there's a requirement of elected officials
Yes.
to go through sunshine law. I think you can have
Your treasurer.
your treasurer do it on your behalf, but it doesn't prevent you from having to go if you want to. I would recommend that you,
I
it's
found
very
even the
informational.
public records, I found very interesting
It's very
because
interesting.
it helps explain why you're so restricted. You know, you can see how these things came about and the reasons probably made sense in the, mid-1900s, but they don't now. So, yeah, I agree.
I did see that the auditor came out this week with, kind of building off social media, and I don't use these apps, maybe nobody else here does, but like for apps that have like disappearing, content, like Snapchat and is it
Instagram.
Signal. Well, Instagram, I don't know that it disappears, but like, there's certain ones that are set up to like disappear in short order.
Oh,
that-
Reels
that-
does though disappear, I think, doesn't it?
Oh, after
I think
like a
the
day or
Reels
something?
Go away for after a couple days.
And that's.
But
a
he's
problem
taking
for
the
public
position that
records.
those are like a violation.
Right.
Potentially.
Like almost entirely, right, because they're not, almost not
Well, it
gonna meet our
depends on the
retention,
content.
yeah.
You know, if it's a public discussion on the school, clearly it's a public record and you have to maintain. But if it's a discussion about going to a movie tomorrow night,
Okay.
that's not a public record.
One of the things that is good about you live streaming your meetings is certainly that they could get more of the context of your discussions. You know, your minutes are just motion and second and what the end vote was. So I do think it's a good thing that people have the opportunity, if they don't want to come, they still can watch and hear the discussion and the reasons that you give, so. Board member Alice is concerned about redistricting plan options, believes more people in the community should be aware of the issue and a potential decision. She'd like to use her Facebook page to encourage people to comment on the potential options. No. We want her to use her Facebook page to say, please come to a town hall that we're doing to discuss the options, or, come to our board meeting to hear the discussion, informational. But when she starts asking for comments, then again, it takes it into the realm of one board member when you don't have that power. You have to be a majority of the board. And it gets very negative. Again, we've talked about most of this. And one of the things that can happen is that social media presence by just one board member can end up hurting the trust that you're trying to develop with you as a whole, because you have to keep saying, why, is she doing this, or we can't do that kind of thing, so. Just a little bit about communication. One of the important things, particularly when you have a difficult decision during a board meeting, and you make that decision, is for the board president to say, we decided to buy the property at Fifth and Main because it has the best drainage, it's close to our current campus, and has plenty of room for parking. Whatever those reasons were that you made the decision to move ahead with the decision can be repeated, that then you all have, when you get stopped and asked why that decision was made, if you have media or people watching, again, they have the real reasons why this decision was made. Inviting students is always good to have students at your meetings. Again, sometimes we get so far removed from why are we doing this? You have to have that fresh face that is at your meeting and reminded, we're doing this for the kids. We're doing what we think again, we would say this is a strategy, and I've seen it work well in a couple different situations. We had a district, a local, that was very huge and had lots of little townships and burbs, and they were feeling very disjointed. And so having the opportunity for the board to go out once a quarter or once a year to different township halls or to a village center kind of meeting, said to them, you're important to us, we want to hear what you think. People still didn't come, but again, you offered that opportunity and you made it that you really want to hear what they had to say. The other thing, and this is what you're going to be facing, is we had a district that had an elementary that was beloved, right? Everybody had gone there, everybody loved the school, but it was falling down. And so they knew they were going to put a bond issue on, and they took the time for 2 years prior to have their meetings in this elementary school, so that people did come to the meeting, they saw floor tiles coming up, ceiling tiles falling, classrooms that weren't even big enough to have any kind of interactive projects going on. So again, it was the visual, telling people when they actually came to them to say, we need a bond issue, you've seen this. Of course, they had to do things like sell bricks from the old elementary, because people had to have that little memento of their wonderful school. But again, it is a strategy that we've seen work really well. Having a communication plan, do you have part-time or full-time communication?
Yeah, part-time person.
Great, great.
She's like 3 months, yeah.
Great. One of the things that we think is important, at least once a year, is for the board to have a conversation with the communications person there about, who are all our stakeholders? What are the vehicles we're using to reach them? Are we making sure that the older adults hear from us on a regular basis? Are we making sure the businesses hear from us? And so we put together a template that I'd be glad to send that is just an easy way of walking through once a year saying, yeah, we're doing this and this and this, and then you put it on your website so that when people say, you didn't tell us that, we didn't know that, you can say, well, we have a communication plan. We should have been sending an annual newsletter to the older adults. Did you not get that newsletter? I can make sure you're on the list. Again, just a way of convincing people that you really are trying to get all of that information out. Surveying, I'm going to talk about in a minute. Again, speaking up professionally and honestly, I'd like Jude's comment about you can agree to disagree and have those conversations.
On the student piece, inviting students, we did, based on one of the OSBA sessions, we do have a student liaison. He's working tonight, otherwise he'd be here, but he does represent and share out news from the students. But yeah, that was because of that session. John Jones really running that. So.
And that is becoming more and more of a trend, is that they are kind of an official member of the board or a liaison with the board. Again, because we were constantly hearing, you don't listen to us. The students were saying, how do you make decisions for us, and yet how do you know what we're thinking? And so that kind of input is so valuable. And plus it says to your community, we're basing our decisions on what's best for kids. We're hearing the students, so good. Surveying, again, is a great way to, again, a strategy, a great way to teach things through your questions. Like, we have this list of extracurriculars. What do you think are the most important? A ranking or a totally agree or totally disagree kind of answer. So again, you're teaching them something, but you're also asking for their input. The key to surveying is making sure that you always talk about the results. Because if you ask and then you never say anything about it, people are like, oh yeah, we told them the truth and now they didn't want to hear it and they're not going to tell us what we said. So making sure that you have that conversation and give those results. It's also a good community engagement tool because when we offer a survey service, we're giving you a link. And so we're going to hope that it gets out to all your businesses, and you divide those answers into, businesses, parents, teachers with kids in the district, those kind of things, so that you can really narrow down what they're thinking and what their issues are. And of course, always a place for comments, because you need to allow them to be able to, usually it's a drive-by because it's confidential and anonymous, right? They're going to tell you that the bus driver is terrible, but it is important to have that. And putting telling people that, you know, this 2 weeks, we would like you to go to the survey, gives them an opportunity to visit your website when they might not have been on your website too. We've seen really creative ways of getting the link out there, like, you know, flyers on cars at football games, or handing out cards at the county fair, all of those kind of things, so that you're saying, we really want your input, and here's the link, so please take the survey. This is the kind of thing that we have done. This was a question that we asked staff members, and you can see the 3 questions on the side. I feel valued and respected in my role as an employee. I feel empowered to do my job. I think every employee has an important role to play when it comes to student success. And you can see how the results broke down. Again, a good tool for James to use, but it also prevents surveying directly teachers about James too. You know, that is not the point of this. The surveying is to test the culture, to see what people are thinking. And so keeping them more of a generic kind of question, but allowing them the opportunity to have comments is always a good thing.
That's an actual one of ours?
Huh? No,
That's
this is
an
one of the
example.
surveys we did.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. And again, the community members we put, I believe the district is proactive in efforts to ensure all students are safe from bullying, intimidation, and harassment, or I believe the district is proactive in policies and practices related to school safety and security. And again, you can see how that broke down. Most times you will find that you are on the right track with the right train, but sometimes there's an outlier that comes out of a survey that you just weren't even thinking about, and it's an avenue that you can make as your board goal or part of your district goal, and really have an impact on something that the community or the business people or your teachers felt was really good. And just to touch on a strategic plan, again, the importance you have limited time and limited resources. You cannot be all things to all people, and we all try and do that. But what we would like to see is that you have a strategic plan that focuses on maybe 1 or 2 years, but nothing goes off the plan, right? So you have things that might happen in 2028, they're still on the plan, but this is our focus for right now. So that all those ideas are captured, but you put priority on them. And that's where a lot of times school boards get caught up in, is we are trying to do all of this, but we can't. We have to do this year, and then next year we'll do this. The other thing that makes it nice is that you use those goals, as Christy had touched on, to do the strategies for superintendent and treasurer. So there's no reason that they need to be working over here when you want to go here. And so having that discussion with the same goals that you've set up for the district, and then letting them decide how they're going to do that. One of the most important things we do when we do strategic planning is we talk about what we don't want to go away, the really good stuff that we're doing. And often teachers particularly and administrators are like, we can't add anything new. We are so swamped now with what we have to do. Well, then get credit for what you're doing. If you are doing these town halls, that's a community engagement goal. That's a strategy that's helping you meet your community engagement goal. The surveying is a strategy. Get it on paper so that it says we are being very thoughtful about what we're doing now and what new we're going to add. And here's how we're going to add that new. We have templates. The plan should live online with the superintendent so that you can go in and change it, and you add deadlines and people responsible. And again, it's not a book that you put on a shelf. When we do strategic planning, it is online. It's a living kind of document.
Excuse me.
I think I did that. And one of the things too that we think is important is the makeup of your group. Oftentimes, the board will try and do strategic planning, which is fine, or maybe the DLT, the district leadership team will do it, which again is good. But if you truly want that community buy-in on what you're doing, we would say that you need a representative from each of your stakeholder groups. So you'd have a teacher, you'd have a student, you'd have community members, you'd have parents, you'd have businesses, and that group of 40 to 45 people come together, and we do 4 different meetings where we walk through vision and mission. Are they still working for you? Do they need to be updated? What are your core values? And then we move into what are the critical issues, both positive and negative, the things that we don't want to lose track of, putting them into then goals and then doing strategies after that. So, lots of information. Any questions or other things that we haven't talked about? Anything administrator-wise, Julie, anything that we didn't cover you wanna? No. I'm so glad that you have such a good board, have such a good district, but you got big things ahead of you, so it'll take some building that trust with you and the community, I'm sure.
Thanks, Terry.
Yeah,
Very
thank
helpful.
you, thank you. And again, good sessions coming up if you can for board leadership and Susie too, so, let alone capital conference, but that always has a million sections. This is a little more focused, it's only about 150 board members.
That
So
was the
it's-
one in May.
All
Is it
day Friday, May
Columbus?
8th, and Saturday morning, May 9th.
Columbus?
Yeah, it'll be at Polaris Hill.
Terry, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You did that in less than 2 hours,
I did.
because we didn't start till like 5 after. Well done. Okay, so no other questions for Terry? Okay, I think our only other item to touch on is we usually talk about the next meeting, which right now is scheduled for Monday, the 23rd. Right now scheduled at 6, but we talked about sometimes in sports season, we bump a little bit.
Yeah, so on Monday, there's a home softball game. Starts at 5, because Magnificat's traveling from the east side. So if it's okay with everybody, I'm thinking we should move the meeting start time to 7, so that we can watch that game.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, do we have it here?
And we're gonna meet here. Yeah, so we'll make that official.
That's very
on the
convenient.
website. So, yeah. I'd hate for you to walk over at 5:55 and then there's a home run. A big,
That would be sure to happen.
a big out.
The
that you
minute I
miss,
leave.
you know, so. All right, so I'll make those changes on the
Great.
agenda.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yep.
And you'll provide notice, moving it on to another time?
Yep. Yep.
And the location?
Yep. Yep.
Good.
Okay.
And we're gonna have a special one next.
Oh, and then Friday, we have a special meeting.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know if you wanna talk about it.
Yeah, the EOR complaints, there were 3 properties that were found that we were gonna challenge. There was a little bit of a, I don't know how to call it, communication error at the attorney's office. Only one of the 3 letters went out, about 7 days prior to the board meeting. So when we were looking at it, Friday seemed to make the most sense, where it wasn't gonna really push too close. We had to get it done by the 31st. So as of right now, I think everyone's responded, and 7:15.
Where are we gonna hold that?
Well,
At the central office.
yeah, it's probably gonna have to be at the central offices here, we'll just disrupt.
Yeah.
So there'll be a public comment section. 'Cause
Yeah.
They can come and comment about, don't do this to us.
Yeah.
And then there'll be the 3, and the
Right.
attorney said, 3 properties, the attorney said it could be a consent vote on
Yeah.
those 3.
Okay. But there's separate resolutions? Is that how the statute reads now?
There are 3
Well,
separate
let's
resolutions.
not get into the details on that, because we only called this special meeting for the purpose of a work session on governance. But certainly, anybody questions, because there's more information,
Yep.
certainly feel free to follow up with Mike to get some more information on that. Just want to be mindful, we can set an agenda, or set a meeting time, but just don't want to get into discussion too much about that. That's okay. Okay. All right.
Make a
Motion to adjourn, thank you. Second.
Mr. Rager,
Yes.
Mrs. Henners.
Yes.
Mr. Merkins,
Yes.
Mr. Hammond.
Yes.
Mrs. Hartley.
Yes. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.